Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
Good morning, I'm Matt McCarthy, and you're listening to Sunday Journal. Summer has, of course, brought the return of great white sharks to our waters, and the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy is once again out on the waters conducting research on the animals, which have become more prevalent in our region in recent years. I'm joined by the organization's co-founder and president, Cynthia Wigren. Welcome to the program, and as I was saying to you a couple minutes ago, this really means that summer is truly here on Cape Cod when we're talking about sharks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and it's been a very active and busy start to the season, so we've been excited about how much activity there has been compared to last year at this time.
So you're in the process of a population study, the sharks here on Cape Cod, and we'll get into that in a big way momentarily, but you were saying it has been a very busy start to the year so far. When does the season start, and kind of how has it gotten from that point to this point?
So we, as an organization, are funding a population study conducted by Greg Scommel and John Chisholm of the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. This is the second year of the study. The sharks start to move into the area around May, and we know from the receivers in the water last year that they're leaving the area around December. But last year at this time, the activity really didn't start to pick up until August. So it's been busy days on the water, seeing multiple sharks. We know that a lot of these sharks are new sharks, which is really interesting and great data for the study.
So when you say a lot of the sharks are new to the area, what does that possibly indicate to you and your team?
Well, I think that is what the study will tell us, essentially. So the population study, the design of it is that last year was the first year of it where they were marking the sharks, and marking isn't tagging. The mark piece of it means to ID the shark, get as much underwater footage as you possibly can of the shark to look for unique markings. And there were 68 white sharks last year that were ID'd and cataloged.
Wow.
So this year, the recapture part of this mark recapture study is that the scientists will be looking to see how many of those sharks that were seen last year and cataloged come back.
And when you look at this population study, it's a multi-year study. What is the eventual goal of the study to find?
So the goal of the study is to get an estimate, a population estimate, on how many white sharks are coming to the area around the Cape. And that has always been the number one question that the scientists get is how many sharks are out there. So until this point, there hadn't been an effort made to try and answer that question. And last year was the first year of the 5-year study that will give that estimate, give people some sense of how many sharks are coming to this area.
And it may seem anecdotally like there have been more sharks in the waters in recent years. Perhaps they're becoming more prevalent. But as you said, it's really hard to say that because there really has not been any study of the shark population in our area.
That's true. Last year, with the start of the population study, meant a lot more time on the water than had previously happened. Last year was also our first year really fully funding all of the research for the season. So now that the scientists have an organization behind them that can fund the work, it allowed for a lot more time on the water. So the population study is 2 days a week from mid-June through the end of October, which really gives an opportunity to see a lot more sharks than you had in the past.
Now, what's a typical day like for you and your team out on the water? You're going out there, you're looking for the markings on the sharks, you're tagging sharks at times. What's a typical day like for you and your team?
So a typical day is we're always out with our spotter pilot, Wayne Davis, who is absolutely incredible. Wayne goes out ahead of us to start scanning the area. He's working between the tip of Monomoy and the Nauset Inlet. And we go out as well. If he doesn't see a shark right away, then we are going up and down the coast, basically looking for a seal activity as well, marking that type of activity, how many seals are hauled out. what do the numbers look like? And then when Wayne spots a shark, he directs the boat to the shark. And the first thing that happens is to get underwater footage of those sharks. So we have 2 GoPro cameras, very sophisticatedly put at the end of a painter's pole. So very high tech. But we use those poles and cameras to get footage of both sides of the shark. And then when Greg Scommel feels that he's had enough footage to be able to ID the shark, then he'll bring out the tagging pole to try and tag the shark.
So let's say you find a shark. You know, your spotter, Wayne Davis, as you were saying, spots a shark. You're able to start tracking it. What's that process like?
Yeah, so it's a lot of communication between the spotter pilot and the vessel and the captain on the boat to really have the shark right next to the boat. A lot of it depends on how deep in the water the shark is, of whether video footage can be taken or not. When the shark moves direction, depending on the conditions of the water or light, it can be really hard to follow it. So some of it's a lot of chasing around, moving around on the water, trying to get as close to the sharks as possible. And tagging is even more complicated because the shark has to be really high in the water for Greg to be able to tag.
I'm Matt McCarthy. You're listening to Sunday Journal. We're joined by Cynthia Wigren of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, obviously in the middle of shark season here. End of July, you're, let's say, a month and a half into the season. How many sharks have you spotted so far this year? Do you have a number off the top of your head?
At least 11 different sharks have been spotted this year, and the first shark of the season that was tagged was a shark that had been tagged last year. She actually had a different tag on her last year, which was set to deploy within 12 months. So it was really incredible to see her again and for Greg to be able to put a different type of tag, an acoustic tag on her this year that will last at least 5 years. We know from the receiver coverage that we have that only one tagged shark has come back to the area that was tagged in 2012. And then the rest of the sharks that we are seeing are new. They haven't even been seen last year in the population study.
Interesting. So what does that mean? Obviously, you know, you're finding 11 different sharks this year. You're not finding as many returners, it seems, so far. Why would that be interesting to researchers?
It just gives some more information on the movements of these sharks in the area. And a big piece of it is it's still early in the season, so it's hard to really say what the full season will look like and how many of the sharks of the 68 that were identified last year will come back. So we should probably do another talk at the end of the season just to discuss what they found or what this research brought.
We will definitely have you in at the end of the year. And how many sharks have you tagged so far this year?
So 2 sharks have been tagged. One was a shark Avery on July 6th, and then the other shark that was tagged was Jameson, which was the big shark story of the season, the shark that was rescued.
Certainly, and that made international headlines, as we were talking about just a few moments ago. A shark ends up beached on South Beach in Chatham, a huge incident. That must have been one heck of a process to get that shark from the beach and obviously not in good shape on the beach, out of the water and back into the water.
Absolutely. It was an incredible team effort. When we arrived, there had already been the harbor masters there and all of the beachgoers working to save this shark, which was incredible. And that's the footage that went viral at this point. International headlines on seeing this shark that was out of the water and all of the people around really rooting for it to survive, which was amazing. When our team arrived, the shark had already been brought into the water by the harbor masters, but he wasn't moving. So it was an effort on our part to start to get water moving over the gills, help the shark breathe, and that's when we brought it to the side of the boat and moved the shark with the boat, essentially having the boat swim for it.
Is there an indication as to how that shark ended up on the beach?
The tide, it's just a challenging area in there with when the tide was going out, it got itself into shallow water and then suddenly was losing water underneath it and not able to get out from that area. And
beachgoers, a huge part of that rescue, the shark ended up beached on there, and beachgoers were pouring water, as my understanding is, pouring water on the shark to try and keep it alive until you and your team and Dr. Scommel and the harbor master could tow it back out into the water.
Absolutely. It was an incredible effort by the people on the beach, and you can see in the video that when the shark is pulled back into the water, everybody is cheering. Once we had the shark with us, there was a period of time where it wasn't moving, and when it finally was swimming on its own ahead of the boat, we passed all of the people on the beach, gave them a thumbs up, and everyone started cheering. So it was incredible to see the effort that was made by the beachgoers.
And we talked to the Chatham Harbor master after that, and he said, in my day we've towed a lot of things, but we've never towed a great white shark. So certainly a notable day for everyone involved. I'm Matt McCarthy. You're listening to Sunday Journal. We're joined this morning by Cynthia Wigren of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. Of course, it is shark season on Cape Cod. How many days a week are you conducting research?
We're out 2 days a week from mid-June through the end of October.
And this activity is centered around Chatham and Monomoy, correct?
It is, yes, and up to Orleans. So,
and up to Orleans.
Yes.
What have you learned so far this year? And granted, it's early on in the year, and the season, as you said, goes into the fall and even the winter at times. What have you learned so far, and what are you hoping to learn throughout the rest of the year?
Well, the effort is really on the population study. So what we have learned so far is that of the 68 sharks that were ID'd last year, that we aren't seeing those back in the area yet. Again, it's 2 days out on the water, so there could be a lot going on when we're not out there. But from the snapshot that we get, right now we're seeing new sharks coming to the area. Also for us in checking the receivers to see what tagged sharks are coming back for the movement study, we have seen very few of previously tagged sharks coming back so far.
And you're in year 2 of the population study. Do you have an indication as to how long this process might take? This is a multi-year project, of course. You have an idea as to how long you might be conducting this study?
Yeah, so the funding for us, when we had talked to Greg Scommel about this is his study with John Chisholm of the Division of Marine Fisheries, and it's a 5-year project for them. So our goal as an organization is to fund this through to completion. Last year, we were able to fund the full study, which we'll be able to do again this year. So that's, that we're the funding arm for the work. They rely on outside funding for all of this. So we hope to be backing them for the next 3 years.
And you say that the funding is going well for this year. How do you go about fundraising for projects like this?
It's a year-round effort. It definitely keeps me very busy. And at this point, we're such a small organization that we try and take advantage of people that offer us free space and bringing Greg out to talk to people about the work and collaborating with other organizations. So we have a big event that's 2 days of expedition in September where we've partnered with the Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and we'll be taking people out on the water for whale watching and then also to look for white sharks. So those are the types of events that we do.
And if folks want to get involved, be it fundraising or other elements with your organization, what's a good way to go about doing that?
They can go to our website. Under Support Us, there's a drop-down menu where they can donate or sign up to volunteer. So we have projects throughout the year and always are looking for volunteers, and it's great to have people involved.
And we talked about, the prevalence of sharks in our area. There was really no indication prior to the beginning of this study as to how many white sharks might be in this area. White shark research has really taken a big step forward, really in the past, few years. I mean, when you go back to, to looking to decades ago, it seems like we have learned a lot about white sharks recently.
We have, and that all surrounds the predictable access that we have in this area now. But that wasn't the case until 2009 when Greg Scommel and John Chisholm tagged the first 5 white sharks off the coast of Chatham. So to have this predictable access really is a unique opportunity because there's a lot that we are learning, but there's so much to learn. There's still so many questions, and I think the more the scientists learn, that even expands the questions that they have about the species. For us also, the fact that we're sharing the same waters as the white sharks here on the Cape, we feel it's really significant to be supporting the research, to get more information about the species, to help with public safety, which is a big piece of what we work on as well.
And you mentioned the big questions that you're hoping to have answered or hoping to learn more about white sharks? What are those big questions?
Well, clearly, how many are out there is a big question. And the significance of that is to really have a base of information to go on to see what that population is doing in the future. You really need to have a better understanding of how many sharks are coming to this area. It clearly seems this is critical habitat for them in feeding on the gray seals here. So just having a sense of that number is important. And then the movement study is the other study that we're funding, and scientists are trying to find out, when the sharks aren't here, where are they going, what other habitat is important for them, and then when they're here, when are they coming here? What are their movements around the Cape? And that fine-scale movement ties into public safety. What areas are they spending most of their time in, and that type of thing.
When you talk about movement, that brings in the element of tagging the shark. So you tag a shark this summer. You follow the movements of where that shark goes. What have you learned over the past few years of the sharks that you have tagged? There certainly have been sharks that the organizations have been following over many years, it seems. What have you learned about those sharks' movements?
There's been a lot learned and a lot of new questions, I think, that have come up as a result of following the movement patterns. Some of it is that sharks are coming to the Cape and spending a short amount of time here. Some sharks are coming to the Cape and spending the season here. So there's a different... They all use the area in a different way, essentially. Then if you look at the sharks that the scientists work with OSearch to tag with those spot tags, those are giving a tremendous amount of information in the long-range movement of these sharks. And you find one shark, Mary Lee, who was tagged here, and everyone knows we've talked about. She's got a
big Twitter following,
she's got a
huge Twitter following.
Exactly. So Mary Lee was tagged here in 2012, and she hasn't returned to the Cape. And what's interesting about that is she's a mature female on the West Coast. They've found that mature white sharks have a 2-year migration. The females have a 2-year migration. And for here, since she hasn't been back in 3 years, that brings up new questions of, why that is. A white shark tagged off of Jacksonville, Florida, has never come to the Cape. So we see that this is what we believe a very important area for white sharks, but this shark hasn't come here. So
it's certainly fascinating stuff, and looking forward to learning more as the season goes on, as the population study goes on. Of course, we're just in the middle of it. I'm Matt McCarthy. You're listening to Sunday Journal. You're joined this morning by Cynthia Wigren of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. They are, of course, in the middle of shark season, going out on the water 2 days a week to study more and learn more about the shark population, the white shark population in our area. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Journal.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Matt McCarthy. You're listening to Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.